You know, I'm going to give you a history lesson.
We got some dumbass motherfuckers floating around this country.
Stop laughing! And when I do, start.
Also, y'all did some nasty-ass jokes on my ass, too.
Funny jokes and unfunny jokes come out of the same birth.
You f***ing guys are unbelievable.
Why are you laughing?
Evening, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Why You Laughing, a History of Comedy podcast. And today, I am pleased to introduce to you Jim Carrey. You may have noticed I'm trying to check off some episodes that have been heavily requested, and Jim Carrey is certainly one of those. And the reason it took me so long to get to Jim Carrey is because I just didn't know. I feel like it would take a lot to fit his entire career into one episode. And it turns out I was correct. So we're really focusing on the early days of Jim Carrey because he has a long career, much crazier even than I realized, and very interesting. And a guy also that, like, I wouldn't have called myself a Jim Carrey fan necessarily. I think a lot of people my age are exactly that, and a lot of comedians now or improv actors certainly influenced by Jim Carrey. And I never had that deep a connection with him until you start going back into his filmography. And I'm like, I guess I loved Jim Carrey because I watched all these movies 7,000 times. It might almost be why I didn't consider myself a Jim Carrey fan, because you're just like, all right, enough with this guy. He was in fucking everything in the 90s.
Oh, he might be my favorite.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people feel that way. I guess I was maybe more of a Sandler guy, at least like consciously. But like I said, I mean, we'll name all the Ace Ventura, Dumb and Dumber, Liar, Liar, Me, Myself, and Irene. All those movies I watched 1,000 times as a kid, probably to the point that I was sick of them. So Jim Carrey had amazing impact. Like we talked about Mike Myers a few weeks ago, but Jim Carrey was, much bigger than that, which is kind of crazy to think about. So we will get into all the trials and tribulations of Jim Carrey's career. And first, I want to tell you to go to blindmike.net, if you wouldn't mind, because that's where all our links are. If you're listening to this program, wherever you get podcasts, Apple, Spotify, I don't know, Stitcher, whatever people use these days, leave a 5-star review and share and tell a friend. If you're watching on YouTube, then like, comment, subscribe. All that helps more people find the show. And if you want to become a member, you get these episodes early. You get early access to Why You Laughing, as well as all the bonus content that we do for members only. So consider becoming a member on YouTube or Patreon for as little as $5 a month. We appreciate you guys doing that. Or, like I said, just support the show for free and engage with the show. It helps people find us. And go back through the archives. We've done a bunch of episodes. We've done closing in on 200 episodes, I think. So a lot of people suggest... I've noticed people in the comments say, like, hey, I liked this Norm episode. You should do an episode about Norm on Conan. And I'm like, buddy, go back a few years. So we've done a bunch. So if you think there's an episode we haven't done, go back to the archives and double check and keep suggesting episodes. Because like I said, a lot of people have requested Jim Carrey. If you've lost hope on me doing an episode on someone you want, don't. We'll get there eventually. Don't you worry. Blindmike.net. All right, let's get into it. Jim Carrey, like I said, he feels like a guy, because he got In Living Color when he was 28, which we'll talk about. So he feels like a guy that just kind of burst onto the scene and was famous. And I think because of some of his, the way he speaks now and his philosophical, enlightened persona that he's created, and a lot of the way he behaves on sets, and we'll talk about that Jim and Andy documentary and all that. He almost feels like a guy who had a silver spoon type of guy, like he was just given everything. Not that at all. Like he struggled both in childhood and early in his career for a lot of years, which I found very interesting. I didn't really realize that. So we'll start talking about Jim Carrey's childhood, where right as a young boy, he was already interested in comedy.
What was the first character you ever created?
Oh my gosh. I used to imitate the Carol Burnett show all the time when I was a kid. I used to imitate Tim Conway. You old man is coming in and shuffling and going over here, and all that stuff. So that was my childhood, was Carol Burnett.
Yeah.
And the great thing is that they're having their 50th anniversary. And, Carol has known this story for a long time, that I tried to get on her show when I was 10 years old.
Yeah, you sent a resume in, right?
I sent a little resume in, and a list of the impressions I did, which were like 120 people at that time.
Wait, you had an actual itemized list of 120
all
impressions?
The people that I did, yeah. And I wanted on the show, I said, like one of the regulars, like Tim Conway or Harvey Korman. And they sent me, I got a letter back from Hollywood. It was like the greatest day of my life.
That's incredible.
Everything went into slow motion. Like that. And it was a letter, like a kind of a form letter or whatever, from an assistant and stuff, with a Carol Burnett signature stamped on it. But it said that you know, they generally hire their talent through agencies and things like that. But the best of luck, and it sounds like you're doing great, and we encourage you to keep going and all that stuff. And then, oddly enough, scribbled on it, "Kill yourself." No,
that was nice of them. In blood, somehow.
So an amazingly confident guy. He has all these stories, and some of them, you know, I don't know if they're exaggerated or what. Like the famous one is him writing himself a check for $1 million or whatever, which I never quite understood. How would he cash it? But whatever.
I think that was the idea.
But he has a lot of stories like that, where like he was tremendously confident as a young kid, and you see that on stage. To do what he does, you have to be pretty ballsy, like, because that could go south really quick. And there's stories of him like in the early days bombing, like the guy that owns Yuck Yucks, the big comedy club where he's from in Canada, said he bombed as a kid. Like Jim Carrey started doing open mics and stuff at like 16, 17. That's another thing I didn't realize, that he was a high school dropout. And we'll talk about some of the other aspects of his upbringing in a second. But like, I didn't realize he dropped out of school to do comedy as a kid. And like, we'll get into these SNL auditions, but he started comedy in the late 70s, which it didn't line up to me. Like, he's only a year younger than Eddie Murphy. So like, it makes sense.
Yeah.
It didn't hit me right when I saw some of these dates and things. So let's hear a little more. He's talking to Howard Stern here about his childhood and how like his family came up growing up.
I mean, you grew up in a car.
I like that music. Keep it going.
Your dad. I was watching some Jim Carrey biography or something, and it was like your dad was. Don't cry.
Yeah, the lips already going.
Your dad couldn't hold a job. You and your whole family lived in a car and had to like be janitors together.
Yeah, but you know what? Through that
came the man you are today.
Yeah, we had some tough times.
Yeah,
sure.
Yeah. Yeah.
Was there any sort of like, hey, we're on an adventure kind of thing about
You know,
it?
honestly, at the beginning, well, you know, when my father lost his job, I was pissed. You know, it was like one of those things. My dad, how dare the universe?
Right. He's the smartest guy in the world. How could that happen?
Exactly. The thing was, he wasn't happy. He would come home and just, that damn guy, man, I tell you, one of these days I'm gonna, you know.
Right,
and,
right.
So I don't know what happened. You know, who knows? Maybe he was miserable there.
All you know is you ended up living in a car.
Exactly. Well, you know, I ended up, yeah, sure. And like trying to be the adult and trying to take care of everything.
I'm fascinated by this.
Yes.
I mean, because people know you live in a car.
We would go around to, you know, one time for a while, we pitched a tent on my sister's lawn in the country. And then for a while, we went to campsites around, you know, Ontario. Right. You know, we'd use the facilities there. And we actually had a lot of fun. We had more fun there than we did when we were doing this job that we didn't like.
The janitor job.
Yeah, the janitor job.
And which
was amazing, by the way.
It seems almost like a bad sitcom.
I know.
The kids are janitors too. But he said he had to work like security for this building, and a lot of the people there would like fuck with that and shit in the toilets that he had to clean up, and it was just like a disgusting job that he had to deal with. And like I said, I don't think you get that vibe from Jim Carrey. He's kind of hid that aspect of his, not hid it because he talks about it openly, but like he doesn't wear it on his face necessarily. And it's also interesting to hear Howard Stern do an interview about a traumatic experience and not want to plunge a knife into your fucking throat.
Well, that explains why he would take such big swings, I guess. He was like, just get me the fuck out of here. In any way.
Yeah. I mean, that is what makes great comedians. I always point to the Steve Martin book, where you know, early on in that book is him essentially giving his resume why he should be a comedian, because he's like, I didn't necessarily have this on paper traumatic childhood, but here are all the things that made me weird. Here's why I'm a comedian. It was almost him like asking for you to understand why like he actually is a comedian, like to believe that he belongs in that group. And I think in a way to have good perspective, you kind of need that. We always talk about these early guys that served in the military and went to war and all that kind of stuff. I do think you need like life experience in order to not only make you relatable to people, but also lead to you having a lot of these observations about humanity that comedians kind of need to have. Like that requires a life. You can't, it's very rare that some rich kid is going to have the perspective that relates to an audience the way someone who grows up in a family of janitors does,
Next you have him with Norm talking about impressions.
So like I said, it's interesting to me. He dropped out of high school and his father was very supportive. He has like a very good perspective on his family. He talks about his mother being depressed and how he always had to cheer her up. But that led to him being a comedian. Like that led to him kind of performing. And he talks about the influence his dad had. They were very supportive of his comedy career, which I think is pretty unique from a family that seemed to be in the financial ruin that the Carreys were in. So they supported him through that, and he did a lot of these impressions. We heard him talking about that letter he wrote to Carol Burnett. He was working on impressions when he was 8 years old. So he became an impressionist, and he was fairly well known in Canada. Norm will allude to it, that like he had this audience in Canada before he came to the United States because of this Impressionist act in the 80s. And he talks about how he felt about that here.
I didn't know you until you had already made it in the States, and we'd all heard of you and everything. And you came back once in a while to Canada, and you had changed. Well, I mean, the first time I met you, I go, "Oh my God, this guy's very comedy savvy. He has a very high comedy IQ." And Kinnison was around, and Mike McDonald, and people were talking, and it was like, whoa, wait a minute, this guy's not an impressionist. This guy's like a comedian.
Yeah, it was that tough transition.
So, and for people who don't know it, impressionists are not looked on highly generally in comedy clubs and have a tough time of it.
And they're not encouraged to drop the impressions and become their own person.
Yes,
at all.
No, of course not.
In fact, and I remember one time I was in Vegas. And I was in the transition.
You pay for Danny Gans, you're paying for James Cagney.
That's right, exactly.
Yeah, so I think he's going to tell the story, but like that impressionists were sort of in this box, and even now, like you don't want to see the other side of Frank Caliendo if you're going to see him in Vegas. You know what I mean? Right. You don't want to know Frank Caliendo's thoughts at this point in his career. So, like, there is a limiting factor to that, which he continues to talk about. And people early on did compare him to Rich Little, and that's why he came to this conclusion.
That moment in Vegas when I saw the Impressionists and I said, this is Valhalla for an impressionist. This is where you go. This is what the end game is. And I went, this can't be.
There is a Canadian performer right now. André Philippe Gagnon.
He's amazing. Incredible. He's amazing. Incredible. But it's not what I wanted. So I quit.
It's not
impressions.
Funny. It's not funny.
No.
I think impressionists are great when they're funny. I think you're funny. I think Dana Carvey is incredibly funny.
I think
guys who do funny impressions.
I saw Rich Little do Cary Grant for Cary Grant. And everybody at Cary Grant's table went, he's got you down like that. And that was the end for me. That was the end for me. I was like, that was it. No.
That type of insight is what makes legends, I think. Like guys that are in the top 0.0001% of like comedic minds, I think need that sort of mentality to look at Rich Little and the laughs that he's getting. And Rich Little was very successful, but just look at him and go, oh, he's getting like polite, like among Cary Grant's friends. They're like, oh, I see what he's doing. But it's not like it's not laughter. It's not like you're not hitting him in their gut. And I think to motivate you to be a Jim Carrey, you kind of need that, like Rich Little was very successful. And I think there's a lot of guys that would have said like, I'll just have a Rich Little career. And Jim Carrey always knew that he wanted more than that, which I think is impressive and brave because like it takes a lot. He was very good at impressions and built kind of an audience off that. Like he was doing, Rodney was very good to him and he was opening for Rodney a lot. And he was doing impressions like in that act. He did, this was crazy to me to find out too. He did the Tonight Show in 83 and Letterman in 84. That also seemed like way too early to me.
Had no idea about
in my mind, Jim Carrey was birthed in 1990 on Living Color.
Yeah.
Like I would have never guessed that he was on Carson 7 years earlier. And he just like rattles off all these impressions. And so to be so talented at that and say, you know what, I'm just going to ditch all that. And now in modern times, that's probably even more difficult because you'll actually build an audience. You know, like some people would go to Jim Carrey shows at comedy clubs or whatever. But now with social media, like you can have a dedicated fan base, you know, just a few years into comedy and doing one thing and getting very successful at that. So like people posting crowd work clips, for example.
Yeah.
Like if you get successful off that, like it would be tough for Matt Rife. You see Matt Rife like trying to abandon that. And the problem is I don't think Matt Rife is Jim Carrey talented, you know?
He also,
like, it's tough for him to get out of that box.
Yeah, he keeps putting out freaking crowd work specials too. So everyone's just going to keep associating.
That's what I mean. Well, it's tough. Like I understand that because it's difficult to be like, I'm just going to abandon what I'm known for. But Jim Carrey did that and obviously paid off for him.
Well, the crazy thing about his impressions is he can like contort his face to anything and it's creepy accurate.
And what Norm said is true, where Rich Little would do an impression and it was just like, oh, yeah, that does kind of sound like Reagan, you know? Whereas Jim Carrey would capture these guys in a way totally randomly before I was going to do this episode. I don't know why this popped up in my algorithm, but Jim Carrey doing Don Rickles on In Living Color.
Oh, my God, I saw that.
I don't know why that popped into my, or all of our, apparently. Well, I don't know why we're all getting fed that clip.
Former Why You Laughing co-host Mike Harris actually sent it to me. And he's like, I've never seen this before. And I watched it and I was like, this wouldn't air like in any time period. I don't think.
I had never seen it either. It's Jim Carrey as Don Rickles roasting
every country.
Yes. Right. Yeah. And it's great. And he has Rickles down. Anyway, like he figured out that impression, but he also has material. Like he figured out a way to kind of fuck with Rickles in a way that people hadn't before. So like Jim Carrey actually was funny, which was a thing Impressionists weren't necessarily known for. Impressionists, it was more of a magic trick before that. Whereas like you have Eddie Murphy and Jim Carrey who do it in a very funny way, which was kind of evolved that. And you even have guys not like Jay Moore is great at that. Where like Jay Moore does a good Colin Quinn, but it's not even so much the voice. It's like him doing Colin Quinn that's very funny, like in a way that is funny, you know? Shane Gill's doing Trump.
Yeah.
It's not necessarily the voice. It's like he's captured something about him that's very funny.
I think the mannerisms are almost more important than how the voice sounds.
Yeah.
Next, we have him talking about the Comedy Store.
Yeah. So he moved from Canada and went to the illustrious Comedy Store. He's all over that Comedy Store documentary on Showtime that Mike Binder did. That's very good. I recommend that. Go check that out. But Jim Carrey, like I said, it's interesting to hear him with Norm because he has a lot of that, modern day Jim Carrey, where he's we'll get into it, but he's like, I'm not Jim Carrey is just an essence. I'm not Jim Carrey. I'm not. And Norm has to be like, okay, but you know what I'm asking you. You know,
I'm James Carrey.
but so he has a lot of that. But then like Norm, when he's talking to Norm, he kind of snaps back into being a comedian, and you realize like, oh shit, Jim Carrey was like a real comedian. You know, he's lost to whatever Hollywood does to a person. He's lost to that a little bit. But there's moments where you're like, oh fuck, he's a guy that came up at the Comedy Store with fucking Pryor and Robin Williams.
Jim, is this true? There was one night where you took up the whole evening. And
Everybody's time.
Every other comedian on the bill's time on stage.
Exactly. I went to the Comedy Store with the express idea of getting in a war with the crowd. Right. And I did. I stayed up for 2 hours because the hate was coming in giant waves. I couldn't lose the fight. So I stayed up. About 2 hours later, I said I was leaving to a standing ovation. They just loved it. I left the stage and then I crawled through the crowd and jumped up behind the piano and began to sing, "I hate you all, you gave me cancer." And the whole audience laughed, except for 5 people who stood around the piano and said, "You are a god. You are a god." And I took that compliment, got back in the car, drove home, and cried all the way home.
It is. That's a funny story. And we've done a pretty good job blowing Jim Carrey so far. So I feel comfortable now saying he's also kind of an asshole, you know?
Oh, yeah.
Now, here's what's weird. Here's the conflict that we as a society are kind of in right now. Is it all right to be an asshole if you give us great art? You know, like that's a conflict that America's been going through for a little while now.
We often talk about the string of comedy specials in a row. Mm-hmm. Like, I don't know if there's an actor that had a better 90s.
I mean, one particular we'll talk about his first year, which is insane. Yeah, the 90s is a wild run, and maybe you need to be that kind of an asshole to go on that type of a run. Like, to have the mentality of I'm going to take over a comedy club for 2 hours. I'm going to tell the other comedians basically to go fuck themselves on the lineup. Like, that's an asshole move. But if you become Jim Carrey, here's the problem. If you become Jim Carrey out of that, people are like, wow, that's a legendary story. There's a lot of guys that became open micers. You know? There's a lot of guys that did that and became fucking nothing. Or even became Gallagher, who had a very successful career, but not good enough to tell everyone to go fuck themselves all the time, you know?
Right.
So that's the tightrope act that Jim Carrey is walking. And I think when you see a lot of his humanitarian takes, he's almost making up for that in a way.
Yeah.
I think somewhere he knows that he is like that a lot.
Yeah.
So that I think is the struggle. And like, it's tough because if you're dealing with that person in their life, like, I don't want to fucking put up with this. But if you get, Ace Ventura out of it, you're all right with it.
Next, we have him with David Spade talking about SNL.
Yeah, so I didn't realize he auditioned for SNL 3 times.
No.
He would have been the youngest cast member ever if he got it his first time. He's a year younger than Eddie Murphy, like I mentioned. And he auditioned, I think, the same year that Eddie Murphy got it and was passed on. And there are times, because like we talked about, he was just doing straight impressions back then. There are times where you read, and SNL is a good example, where you see the list of people that were turned down for SNL, and you're like, oh my God, how great would it have been if they brought on this person or whatever. But then you realize, like, Jim Carrey got turned down when he was 20 years old or maybe younger. And you're like, you know what, maybe that's a good thing,
Oh, yeah. Think of the movies he would have not gotten.
Who knows what we would have gotten out of Jim Carrey, especially if he's on the show with Eddie Murphy overshadowing him. He wasn't ready yet. Maybe we never get Jim Carrey at all if he gets SNL in 1980. He auditioned again in 85, I think. And that's another year. It kind of makes sense he didn't get it. He lost out to Dana Carvey and Phil Hartman. So you're like, okay, that's fine. I'm fine with that,
Good
I
trade.
get it. I also get why you probably can't have Dana Carvey and Jim Carrey in the same cast.
Oh my God, that'd be
kind of the same guy.
Instead of liking both, I'd hate them both, I think.
And the other thing too is, like, we'll talk about Jim Carrey did Cable Guy, which was supposed to be a Chris Farley movie. I think him being in the cast with Chris Farley, if he was there during that time also, because that's the run that he was on in Living Color. If he was there with Chris Farley, I think it almost would have been like too much.
Yeah, I think Cable Guy
would have been exhausted by the end of that episode.
And I think Cable Guy might be the most underrated movie ever made.
A lot of people say that. It's a lot of people's favorite Jim Carrey movie.
It's so fucking funny. It's definitely in my top for him.
Yeah. Very underrated at the time, but people love it now. But anyway, sorry, back to SNL. So this is him talking about his SNL audition.
If you got on SNL, would things be different for you?
I did audition for SNL. I don't know if you've heard the story, but I got out at NBC in the Valley, and I was like, gosh, I hope this is a lucky day for me. I walked out of my car, closed the door, and I heard, "Don't do it! Don't jump!" Like that. And I looked up at the top of NBC building, and there was a page in a blue coat trying to get his nerve up, standing on the NBC logo, trying to get his nerve up to jump off. And I went, not a good sign. Not a good sign. Yeah. But yeah, so Lauren and I still have a running thing where he's like, it was Franken.
Well,
Franken put the kibosh on.
Yeah. He didn't like me either. All right. That's true.
I only left that in just because I love how bitter David Spade is. Yeah, fuck him. But ultimately, for Jim Carrey's, I think the reason he became Jim Carrey is because he wasn't on that SNL cast.
Yeah.
Sure. You know, like I said, if he's there with Phil Hartman, Dana Carvey, Mike Myers, or Farley, Sandler, Spade, Norm, like Chris Rock, if he's competing with all those guys, he got to be the white guy on In Living Color, who got to be in a lot of sketches. You know what I mean? Like he stood out in Living Color, kind of the way Eddie Murphy did on SNL. And I think a lot of that is because it was on seemingly his own show. The other thing is about Living Color, kind of a tribute to SNL. That was such a popular show, and that's another episode that people ask me to do all the time. People think very fondly of In Living Color. It was only on 4 years. So when you look at SNL having a 50-year run, like that's how crazy it is that people love In Living Color. It was on 4 or 5 years.
It's crazy though that it's as talked about as it is, and it was not long-lived.
A relatively short run, yeah. But this is we're talking about that next, right?
Yep.
Yeah. So this is Damon Wayans talking about kind of coming up with Jim Carrey through the Comedy Store.
Did you know Jim Carrey was going to be that? Yeah, I'm the one that brought Jim to Keenan. So me and Jim used to be in the comedy clubs. Jim Carrey is a master impressionist.
Yes.
Like he does like Sean Penn.
Yeah.
Like weird, like Michael Landon. Like he would get standing ovations in a comedy club doing a 20-minute set. Now, any comedian will tell you that's damn near impossible. There's few and far between that can do that. That's how good he was. But he hated doing the impressions because people thought that's all he did.
Right.
So me and him, after Sam Kinison made it, like we made a pact that we're going to push each other.
Mm-hmm.
So he would go on stage, he couldn't do his impressions, and we just yell out stuff to him. And then he would do the same thing for me. And we would just challenge each other on stage. We had nothing to lose.
Right.
You know? But Jim, I truly knew he was special. And it didn't take Keenan long to go, he's the guy. Because they saw every white boy in Hollywood for that role.
Right.
Keaton Ivory Wayans he's talking about. And I think in that same interview, Damon Wayans talks about how much Jim Carrey means to his family. He's like, he was our Eminem, he calls him.
I love that.
Which is pretty funny. And it's funny because you're like, I don't remember the Wayans brothers in a lot of Jim Carrey movies. So I don't know how much he repaid them, but either way.
I don't remember seeing Jim Carrey in Major Pain though.
That's true. That's a good point.
Underrated movie again.
But Keaton Ivory Wayans is who Damon is talking about. Obviously, his brother. That In Living Color was his show, and we have Keaton Ivory Wayans talking about Jim Carrey's role there now as well.
He bring characters like Fire Marshal Bill with him.
Jim brought Fire Marshal Bill is his character, but Fire Marshal Bill was 10 different things before it was Fire Marshal Bill. So I had a process where I would, like at the end of a season, I would tell everyone to go away, and when you come back, I want you to bring me 3 characters. Observe the world, bring me 3 characters. So everybody would come back and they would pitch. So Jim had this face. That's what he had, was this face. and he pitched it as a Make-A-Wish kid. He pitched it as a burn victim, and then he came back with the fire marshal, who is a burn victim, and he had the voice to go with it and the attitude, and I was like, this is going to be brilliant. And so, worked out the sketch, and it was the first Fire Marshal Bill is so funny that the Firemen's Association was pissed. Like, they sent us all these letters, and they were picketing us. It was eventually he became the mascot, but at first they were like, what?
And yeah, another thing, like with In Living Color, is I think it was also where Fox was this new, like, kind of hip thing. It didn't feel as stale as some of the older established networks. It was almost like being on the internet now, where you're like, oh, this isn't what my parents are telling me is funny. This is like this new thing. Like Martin Lawrence is on there, and Married with Children is on there, and the Simpsons, and all this new weird stuff that you weren't getting on the other networks, really. And I think that's why Jim was able to kind of explode. That's another thing, by the way, that Fire Marshal Bill sketch. That's another sketch that I feel like in recent years has popped up, like people referencing a lot and posting on Instagram and stuff like that, and has had a resurgence. So, like, you don't really think of him. You think of him for the movies in the 90s.
Mm-hmm.
What's interesting is he had this run on a sketch show that, by the people who liked it and enjoyed it and watched it, it's equivalent to, this might seem like hyperbole, but like Eddie Murphy, Chris Farley's runs on SNL, like these legendary runs. It just doesn't have that. People don't talk about it that way because it was on a different show. It wasn't on SNL that we all revere and celebrate and talk about. But Jim Carrey's run on In Living Color, like, you could put that up against some of those great performances in sketch comedy history.
Absolutely. But next we get into his movies.
Yeah. So is this, he's back on, this is an earlier Stern appearance from like 94 or something, right?
Yeah. Talking about Ace Ventura.
Oh, it is 94 because that's the year he went on this crazy run. So we're going to hear him talk about Ace Ventura and Dumb and Dumber. And when you realize that this was all happening in 1 year, everything he's about to talk about, it might be the wildest year in film history. 94 was a crazy year in film in general.
Yeah.
If you just look at like the Oscar nominees that year and stuff like that. But Jim Carrey also had one of the most insane years in film history.
Listen to me. So Jim gets this script, Ace Ventura. It's a real dog of a script.
He fixes it.
Well, all I know is your performance in it was brilliantly funny. It was. I mean,
How much did we talk about how bad that movie was going to be?
And I said the movie was going to bomb. And I even said when the movie was a hit, I said it's a fluke. If these parents are bored, they don't know what to bring their
Nothing else
kids.
to take their kids to.
So I got a copy of this finally, and
Hey
I see
kids,
it.
let's go see Schindler's List.
Right, not that Ace Ventura.
Anything but that.
Right. So I watched this Ace Ventura, and I'm laughing my ass off. I mean, it's really funny. I mean, it's like funny, like. It's funny.
Incredibly funny.
So then I said, well, maybe I'm insane.
Dangerous.
Yeah.
On the edge.
I said, maybe I'm crazy. Maybe I'm just in a good mood because I'm on vacation.
Yeah, what? I haven't seen a movie in a long time.
I give it to my father. I said, you got to watch Jim Carrey in this movie, Ace Ventura. You got to watch this. He goes, I'll watch anything. I said, even Jim Carrey and Ace Ventura? Yes, I'll watch. He goes, boy, that guy's funny. I mean, he could take, I said, that's why they're going to pay him $7 million a movie. If he could take a crummy movie.
Yeah.
If he could take a bad movie and make it good, this guy's big.
And that is true. Ace Ventura in anyone else's hands, is a dog shit movie. You're like, what is this? And they said, like the script itself was like a lot of that wasn't in the script. I think Jim Carrey said that the talking butt thing came from, he would do that. Like he was pissed at Keenan Ivory Wayans on In Living Color. And would just turn around and start talking to him out of his ass. So that's where that came from. But like Ace Ventura, if you just read the script, it's a horrible movie. You're like, what the fuck is this? But Jim Carrey is able to make it great, which I think is the mark of a great comedian, and it's something that doesn't really happen with comedies anymore, where you just sign a comedian, give him a movie, and let him go. And to be fair, I don't even know who that personality would be right now, because it's like that's very Eddie Murphy, Jim Carrey, Adam Sandler, I guess for a time, like very limited guys could just do that without a great script in place. Chris Farley probably could have done that if he lived longer. He was probably capable of that. But it's very, very few guys would able to have the run that they had in movies that, like, on paper might not be great, which Ace Ventura was certainly one. And like critics ripped it apart even after it came out, which is silly. Like, even if you don't find it funny, I don't get how you watch that and you're not like, well, this guy has something. He's tapped into something,
Right. Next we have Dumb and Dumber.
Yeah, I don't know. I've probably heard people talk about it before. I don't know that I really fully understood that Ace Ventura, The Mask, and Dumb and Dumber were all the same year. I'm sure I've heard that referenced, but it was not till hearing him talk about it that I was like, holy shit. What a run where you're a guy on a sketch comedy show and all of a sudden the biggest star in comedy.
Yeah.
And after you're done with The Mask, then what movie is coming? That's the one they signed for $7 million, right?
Then I'll do Ace 2 and Mask 2.
And you've already done Dumb and Dumber or whatever.
No, wait a second. What is the one you did for New Line for $7 million?
That's such a funny bit of history where Robin is like, what is this stupid fucking movie?
Yeah. They've done that with every movie that he's mentioned so far.
Dumb and Dumber.
Or whatever.
No, wait a second. What is the one you did for New Line for $7 million?
Dumb and Dumber.
Now, this is a great story. This is the story where now you'd been signed for like $400,000. They had come to you and you wanted to do Dumb and Dumber.
Yeah.
And you said you would do it for like 400 grand.
Yeah.
And they said, nah.
I said I would do it for $1 million, and then
Right. They said $1 million and they went, oh, $1 million? We're not paying Jim Carrey $1 million. Who the hell does he think he is? Then Ace Ventura comes out. They see how good it is. They see how much money. It makes $52 million the first weekend or something.
Yeah.
And they go, Jim, would you do Dumb and Dumber for $1 million? He goes, screw you. So then they had to pay you $7 million, right?
Yeah, like 6 days later.
Do you get that?
That's great.
That is wild. Like, good for him in that moment where you're watching this guy who, again, like, if you just look at it on paper, you're like, oh, at 28, he gets In Living Color, and then right away gets Ace Ventura, The Mask, and Dumb and Dumber. You don't realize what went into it, that there was a 12, 13-year comedy career before In Living Color, these failed auditions. He had a bunch of failed pilots in the 90s. He had a show that its lead-in was Cheers, and that still fucking bombed. He was in like these bit parts in movies. He was in a Coppola movie, but not one of the good ones. So like he had this, this run that a lot of comedians go on, like the struggle that a lot of comedians and actors deal with for the early part of their career. But it doesn't feel that way for Jim Carrey. And then you realize, like, they laughed at the idea of paying him $1 million. And then eventually he got to the point where he's like, how about $7 million?
Yeah. His 90s was Ace Ventura, The Mask, Dumb and Dumber, Batman Forever, The Cable Guy, Liar Liar, and then The Truman Show. All unbelievable.
Me, Myself, and Irene also. No, was that not 90s?
Wasn't that like 2000?
Okay, maybe. Maybe it was early cusp. But yeah.
Regardless, and that movie might be his best movie.
And you mentioned Batman. He was in a Batman movie.
He was the Riddler.
It's not, it wasn't Heath Ledger's character or anything like that. But like he was in a Batman movie, which is pretty crazy. Yeah, he was the Riddler in the Batman movie, which is
Me, Myself, and Irene was 2000. So
yeah, okay. So he went right into the 2000s with the good, and even like Bruce Almighty is probably where people will all argue he starts to fall off, but like
that's still
that's a good performance, like for what the movie was, and it made a lot of money. And he was the Grinch early in the 2000s. Like he has this insane run.
The Grinch was great. I think the turning point was that 23 movie.
Oh my God. I remember in college, me and my friends would like anything that came up would be like, hey, wait, add that up.
Yeah.
He's such a ridiculous. It was like the guy we covered on WATS, GG33. It was just like, this is such a stupid premise.
Oh, it took me 33 steps to get to the fucking I hated that movie, and ever since I think that's when his like pompous shit started too.
That's where Jim Carrey thought to be like, think about it, man. And it's
Right.
like, no, we're thinking about it. We understand. Numbers add up to things.
I think that movie is just how his brain works.
Yeah, a little bit.
But
But
next
even like Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind, that was like a good movie.
Yeah, like he can like Truman Show is one of those ones that's funny but like serious. You know, like has that, like I like him in that zone. Like that zone.
I mean, Man on the Moon is good. We didn't even mention. We'll mention Man on the Moon later. We'll talk more in depth about that. But like that was also a good movie, and that's out of his wheelhouse a little bit.
Right, but like I don't know. Like the 23 movie was like almost like borderline horror. I don't know what they were going for, but it was just it didn't make sense.
Yeah.
Like
What did it make you think? It was like an Inception type of movie, but just not executed that well.
Yeah, it was like A Beautiful Mind if it flopped.
Yeah.
But we haven't talked about his different roles here.
Okay, yeah. So this is him talking about the Truman Show and taking roles like that, because now the other thing he had to fight, much like being an impressionist, was okay. Now you're the wacky guy. You're the idiot in the movie. You know what I mean? You are Lloyd Christmas. You're Ace Ventura. You're the fucking moron that is silly on the movie screen. How do you break out of that? And that's another like difficult. You have to make difficult choices to not get put in that box.
And then you made it in film. You had that extraordinary year in 1994.
Yeah, there's all the way along. I mean, the projects you take. I mean, the Truman Show was another moment where I had to kind of deal with. Well, you're not allowed to do that. You've presented yourself one way, and it's a tough thing to convince people that there's something more, or that they might want to see something different. But I've always believed, all the way along, I've believed that it was about a spark.
Right.
It was about who you are as a person. It's about your soul.
Yeah.
It's about not necessarily. I mean, you do what you do so well, but there is something about you that is attractive to people in a way that they want to sit and watch you for an hour and listen to you and listen to your insights. But it's about you and who you are.
It was also funny to hear him say that going through all the Jim Carrey interviews that I went through, because you have that where he's talking, in the early 2000s to Charlie Rose, and he's like, it's about you. Like, people are interested in you. And then years later, people will ask him like, what's next for Jim Carrey? And he's like, there is no Jim Carrey. I'm merely a vessel here to put the Jim Carrey doesn't exist. It was a character I was playing. And it's like, all right, but you know what I mean, right? Like, I'm just asking what movie you're doing next, dickhead.
Don't ruin my childhood, please.
Come on, man.
Yeah, even like Liar Liar is so good, and it gets lost in the movies he put out in the 90s, I feel like.
Yeah, I think because Ace Ventura and Dumb and Dumber were so big in people's memories. You know what I mean? Like those are the two like you really point to. But yeah, like that is a crazy. Truman Show might be one of my like favorite movies. I love that movie.
It's a great movie. And like I said, Cable Guy is up there. I know it doesn't count for his 90s, but Me, Myself, and Irene is probably the hardest I've laughed at a Jim Carrey movie.
Yeah.
It's just so ridiculous. Like it's a great movie.
You know what? Norm really complimented this, and I don't know if he was just kissing Jim's ass, but Norm isn't known to do that really. Maybe I'll have to watch it again because I hated this movie. He said Jim was great. He goes, Norm goes, you know what I loved was the incredible Burt Wonderstone, that movie about magic where Jim Carrey's essentially playing like Chris Angel type of guy.
I don't think
Maybe I'll have to go back and watch that because Norm sang its praises, which carries weight with me. I remember hating it, but maybe I'll have to go back and watch that.
Norm like that. I have to like really focus.
Yeah.
Next we have Tommy Lee Jones.
Okay, so this is where we're getting into the dick Jim Carrey, where again, like, I think maybe to have those roles, Jim Carrey needed to be this guy, like to be Ace Ventura or whatever. Like you have to be that guy. Like Daniel Day-Lewis. Like did Daniel Day-Lewis have to like text as Abe Lincoln in order to deliver that performance? No, but in his mind he did. So we wouldn't get Daniel Day-Lewis without that, you know?
I feel like if you're also not going to commit to writing out with like a feather pen, you can't be.
Yeah, right. You can't text as Lincoln. It doesn't make any sense. But point being, like, maybe in order to get some of these performances, you kind of have to accept these people being an asshole. But this is a very funny Tommy Lee Jones story that he's telling Norm. And Norm has a good question here, where like, was it difficult for a lot of these, respected actors to deal with a Jim Carrey type?
That's what Tommy Lee Jones said to me too. He said he couldn't sanction my buffoonery.
He couldn't.
He couldn't sanction my buffoonery.
What movie is this?
That's when we did Batman.
Yeah. Wait, you're the star though.
I was the star. That was the problem. Yeah.
Do you think? Did you ever have this problem with
Phenomenal actor,
with guys who were like, "I'm a better actor than this fucking movie star"? Did you ever get that?
No, because there is no me.
Oh, but I mean, the guy that Tommy Lee Jones was talking to.
See, Norm does a good job with it, where he's like,
Yeah.
okay, but the guy you and I both know we're talking about.
Is he still doing that?
I don't know. The last time I saw anything from Jim Carrey was him saying that he would have sued Will Smith for $200,000 if he was Chris Rock.
The last thing, oh yeah, I mean, like for sure. The last thing I saw him was like strapped up to a harness, like hovering over a canvas painting, and he's like, "I'm amazing." And I went, "I think I'm done for a while."
But you got to get past that, because then he gives there's a funny rest of this story. So get past the part where there is no me. Norm drags him out of that.
I was at a restaurant, and the maitre d' said, "Oh, Tommy, I hear you working with Tommy Lee Jones. He's over in the corner having dinner." And I went over and I said, "Oh yeah, great." I went over and I said, "Hey Tommy, how you doing?" Like that, and the blood just drained from his face, like he had been thinking about me 24 hours.
You'd already done the movie.
It was just fucking no. It was before the biggest scene we have together in the movie, and the blood just drained from his face, and he started shaking, and he got up and he went like this. He must have been in mid kill me fantasy or something like that. He was like like this, and he went like to hug me, and he said, "I hate you. I really don't like you," like that. and I said, "Gee, man, what's the problem?" And I pulled up a chair, which probably wasn't smart. And he said, "I cannot sanction your buffoonery."
It's a great quote. A great old man quote. "I cannot sanction your buffoonery."
I like how he was an old man in the 1995 Batman Forever movie.
Kind of was, right? Yeah, because in Men in Black, he was like the old guy. So that's how I think of Tommy Lee Jones.
Hey, old guy.
What was I saying? Yeah, but so there's a lot of stuff like that, and now there's think pieces put out about Jim Carrey's behavior. Particularly because of that Jim and Andy documentary where he was an asshole, which we'll talk about. But like, there's stuff where, at an award show, he goes up and kisses Alicia Silverstone without her knowing he was going to do that beforehand. There's like shit like that where Jim Carrey just made himself the center of attention at the expense of everyone around him. And like I said, if you're dealing with him, then fuck this guy. Like, I get Tommy Lee Jones being like, this fucking guy, man. I got to deal with him for 6 months or however long that movie shoot is,
Yeah.
So I do get that, but then you're like, do you get Jim Carrey? Is it possible to get Jim Carrey? Because there's a lot. Now, the alternative to that is Adam Sandler, who seems to be the coolest guy on the planet and made some of the best movies of the 90s, the best comedy movies of the 90s as well. Like, so there's levels to it, but Jim Carrey's performances are a lot different than Adam Sandler's. So, is it the chicken or the egg, I suppose? Do we get Jim Carrey because he's like this or vice versa?
Next we have Paul Giamatti talking about Man on the Moon.
I love Paul Giamatti, much like Sandler. Seems to be like a regular guy.
Yeah.
So this must have been fucking exhausting to deal with this asshole. If you haven't watched Jim and Andy, it's a documentary about the making of Man on the Moon, the movie about Andy Kaufman, which I think is a very good movie. But what went into that is Jim Carrey becoming Andy Kaufman. And I think that is where you start to get this, the talk like we heard before, where there is no me. Because he'll talk about that. he's like, well, Andy showed up to set that day. And you're just like, okay, Jim. Andy was long dead.
Was his family like he didn't really talk like that all the time?
I couldn't find the clip. I've seen it before. It was one of those foundation interviews that I often use. I could not find the clip, but I swear it was Mary Lou Henner saying, like, when that movie came, like, Andy was not like that.
Yeah, I think
she was like, Andy would do some like crazy things on Taxi, and sometimes he could be difficult to deal with, but he was a nice man. Like, he was not how Jim Carrey portrayed him.
And I think it's on the Andy Kaufman episode we did. I think that clip is in there.
Yeah, I couldn't find it this time, unfortunately. But yeah, like people have talked about before that like worked with a new Andy Kaufman. They're like, he wasn't just this constant asshole 24 hours a day. There was a human inside there, which Jim Carrey seemed to lose. Now, again, you could argue for the performance. The performance isn't showing, Andy alone in his apartment,
True.
The performance is showing the eccentric side of Andy Kaufman. So maybe he needed to tap into that or whatever. But this is Paul Giamatti describing dealing with that type of energy.
Man on the Moon.
Man on the Moon. Oh, it was yeah, it was challenging. It was not easy. He was great, but it was tricky, because it was sometimes hard to just kind of fit yourself around what he was doing, being in the thing all the time. And it was tricky. It was amazing. And they made a documentary because he filmed all this stuff off camera. Mm-hmm. And it was like, what was going on off camera was more insane than the actual movie. And I think the idea was to make some kind of movie out of that, which eventually he made this documentary about it. But it was like,
so it's Jim Carrey playing Andy Kaufman, who's playing Tony Clifton.
Tony Clifton, yeah. So it was like, he was home whenever he was Tony Clifton, it was particularly mayhem off the set because he was just fucking, he would.
So you yell cut, and he's still in character, and the character of Tony Clifton is loud, obnoxious,
belligerent fucking asshole who's just lunatic.
Yeah, what
you can tell Giamatti's a nice guy, but is like, I wanted to fucking punch him in the face.
You can tell he got sucked right back into it too. He's like,
just fucking asshole. Yeah, so like it's tough because like maybe you need that to be Jim Carrey, like I said, but I can't imagine you need to be that much of a fucking asshole to everyone around you in order to tap into a performance like that. But I've never given a performance like that, so what do I know? I suppose
every Sunday at 10 a.m.
That's true. I really tap into something. So yeah, I mean, Jim Carrey, I don't think of, like, we had the conversation, like, should we call this the downfall of Mike Myers when they did that episode? I think Jim Carrey did so much for such a period of time that I don't really look at it in the exact same light. But there is this thing with comedy stars, whether it's Eddie Murphy, Chevy Chase, Will Ferrell, Mike Myers, even Ben Stiller now, who is still doing stuff, but like not the way he did before. There's a thing with like these comedic stars, Adam Sandler, where it's like there's a 10-year run where you can be the crazy, just put him in a movie and let him fucking go. There's not that long where you can tap into that, and then you kind of have to evolve and change. And excuse me, Jim Carrey tried like more dramatic roles and things like that. And some work better than others. He's still around and he pops up. What I like about Jim Carrey is he hasn't lost necessarily the comedian in him.
You gotta really dig for it to find it, though.
You gotta dig a little, but he'll pop up on award shows and he'll go on Kimmel. There's a clip of him on Kimmel accusing talk show hosts of being like government agents, which is pretty funny. like he will go on and be funny on a lot of these talk shows and award shows. Like, so the comedian still exists in there. But yeah, like you said, you have to dig a little. What's the next clip? I don't want to get too.
Say that this episode could be the rise of Jim Carrey, and the next one will be the downfall.
Yeah.
Next, we have him talking about his success.
Yeah, so I think this is where like you get a little of that introspection and people give him shit for it at times. Like I said, I didn't really realize where he came from. So I might view this clip and this philosophy a little differently than other people.
It's been a part of the evolution of ego is to spend your first half of your life acquiring and adding, thinking you can add to yourself. And it looks great. I mean, it looks great when you got a cool car and you got good, nice clothes and, you know, and you've done something that people admire, you know, but it can never fulfill you. You can never be happy. You know what I mean? It's not where happiness comes from. And, you know, I dealt with depression, you know, a few years ago, and people still think, well, he's going through, you can tell he's depressed. And it's not. I have no depression in my life whatsoever. Literally none. I have sadness and joy and elation and satisfaction and gratitude beyond belief, but all of it is weather, and it just spins around the planet. You know, it's not. It doesn't sit on me long enough to kill me.
So there's another quote he has where it's similarly to that one. He says something like, you know, like once you have money, you know, you think money is going to bring you happiness, and then once you have money, you realize that ain't it. And people have given him shit for that over the years. And I now look at Jim Carrey after like looking more into how he was raised, and I'm like, no, he has a good perspective on that. And he's not saying, by the way, I think when he says that, he's not saying like, hey, me and the, you know, bus driver trying to make ends meet, we're the same. Right. I think he's saying just, you know, these people that wish for millions of dollars or fame and success, whatever, it's not necessarily going to bring you happiness, you know? And I think there's something to that. I mean, how many examples have we seen where that's true, where celebrities seemingly have everything and, you know, get addicted to drugs or, you know, have suicidal tendencies or whatever it is. You know, countless times that happens. So I think there's something to be said for that. Like, he is, if you can wade through the douchiness of some of his introspection, I think he makes some good points, is what I'm trying to say.
Next we have Norm.
Yeah, so we've already played Norm, but because he was on the legendary talk show, in my opinion, the best talk show ever, Norm Macdonald Live, I figured we'd give you a couple other Norm nuggets that I really appreciated. And Norm, well, I won't spoil it. I'll let Norm tell you.
I just want to say that I think this is the greatest show on television.
Oh, listen to Jim. This is amazing.
Honest to God. Because we don't need frills any longer, right?
No, I don't think we
Fuck
do.
the frills, right? Let's just get to the point.
Yeah.
It's just people making sound.
That is a
That's
lot.
all it is. It's a nightlight, you know? It's something like to entertain you, and at the same time, like I can sit, first of all, you are the man. You are my comedy choice. Whenever I'm looking for something on YouTube or whatever it is, Norm's always my first comedy choice.
God damn, that's nice.
Yeah, and I sit there, but you can suck up a little bit of it. I sit there naked, just going like, "Why is this such a big deal? What's the big deal about this?" And I tune into Norm because you're it, man.
I mean, maybe he's just kissing Norm's ass, but I do like to hear that he loves Norm in that way, you know?
Yeah. We have one more Norm clip.
Yeah. This is my favorite one because this to me is Norm. This is why Norm is so great. And you saw a little bit of it with Spade in that Spade clip we played, where like just not giving a fuck about like the industry and the bullshit way people talk. Like most people would kiss Jim's ass and not call him out for this. But this is very funny when Jim recounts a time that he met up with Norm Macdonald.
When you came and visited the set of Man on the Moon?
Oh, sure, yeah.
And
I was also in the film. That's how I like to put it.
Norm does that in such an amazing way where it's not making the guy feel bad. It's almost like he's being humble in doing that, But what he's also doing is calling him out for just being kind of a Hollywood douchebag. Remember when he came to visit me on the set of Men, and he's like, I was in the movie. Playing, by the way, do you know who he was playing in Man on the Moon, Craig?
I don't.
Michael Richards. There's a scene, famously, Andy Kaufman ruined a sketch on Fridays, the show that Larry David wrote for, that Michael Richards was in. And when they recreated that scene, Norm was playing Michael Richards. Fun fact. I'd like to see, I wish Norm was around to reprise his role as Michael Richards for a different event. But
you know what's hilarious? I thought he said, yeah, I was in the film because of the way he was off screen. I thought he was just like making fun of him for staying in character, not that he was actually in it and he forgot.
Oh, yeah. No. Jim was like, hey, remember the time you came to visit me? And Norm's like, well, I like to call it the time I was in the movie visiting you.
I thought he was taking a dig at him for staying in character.
No.
Oh, that's even funnier then.
Yeah, so that's, like I said, we mostly focused on Jim's, or you could say entirely focused on Jim's early career. I don't know that there would be enough in the 2000s to be worth doing a part 2. But if you guys think we should, feel free to suggest it in the comments, and I'll consider it. But definitely a legendary career, one of the great comedy careers of all time. No matter how you slice it.
I think if we take the downfall angle, we can definitely do a part 2.
Yeah, there might be something there, I suppose. But he had such a wild run. That run in the 90s, put it up against anyone. I don't know who you fucking Aykroyd, Belushi, Bill Murray, Chevy Chase. Like, I don't know who you put it up against, but I think it might beat everybody. The run that he had for 6 or 7 years.
He definitely probably had the greatest year an actor ever had.
I think that same year, didn't Tom Hanks have 3 incredible movies come out? Or am I thinking of, maybe I'm thinking of the wrong year, but I'm pretty sure Tom Hanks had a run like that also. But people will let us know in the comments, folks.
Was that the year Forrest Gump came out?
It was, but I think 2 other Tom Hanks movies came out that year. But I'll look it up after. But people will let us know in the comments, which we appreciate you guys doing. Engage with the show, like, comment, subscribe, helps more people find us. And if you're listening wherever you get podcasts, leave a 5-star review, tell a friend, and go check out the back catalog of Why You Laughing. The easiest way to find all that stuff is blindmike.net. That's where all our links are. If you want to become a member on YouTube or Patreon, you can do that for as little as $5 a month. You get early access and bonus content. We appreciate you guys subscribing and supporting the show for free. And go to verygoodshow.org to support Craig, I guess.
Go see what's happening.
Yeah. Check every day. Just go.
One of these days.
Yeah. Make it like an investment account. Is it up yet? Have things popped off yet at verygoodshow.org?
They're going to explode when they do. That's for sure.
That's right. All right, guys. Thank you for joining us. And we'll talk to you next time on Why Are You Laughing?
Zip it up and zip it out.